All right, listener name you, ready to become a housemaid with a hidden past. We're doing a deep dive into Freida McFadden's The Housemaid series, and especially all those crazy twists and turns you love. You shared a Yale Daily News review of the first two books, so The Housemaid, and then The Housemaid's Secret. So let's see if they're really as good as everyone says they are.
Yeah, just glancing at this review, it looks like McFadden really knows how to keep people reading. The reviewer seems super impressed by how she puts twists all throughout the story, not just like one big reveal at the very end.
That's got to be what makes a thriller really good, right? Is that you're always on edge trying to put the pieces together. And that's what the reviewer was really into with these books. So let's start with The Housemaid. So we meet Millie, she's our main character, and she's an ex-con who gets a job as a housemaid for this rich family, the Winchesters. Seems like there's going to be some tension there.
For sure. I mean, that background already makes you wonder a lot of things, like why is Millie choosing this kind of job? What secrets is she hiding from her past? And is her past going to crash into the Winchesters' perfect little world? It's like waiting for a bomb to go off.
Yeah, the reviewer mentioned how everyone in The Housemaid has some kind of backstory, and all those backstories end up getting tangled up together in ways you wouldn't expect. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Right. It's like this web of connected lives that makes the whole plot so interesting.
Yeah.
You start seeing how everybody's past actions, what they did, it all has consequences. Like you can't just bury your secrets forever.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about figuring out the mysteries. Like you want to understand what makes these characters tick, what they want, and what they choose to do when things get really tough.
Okay, now, in The Housemaid's Secret, Millie's working for a new family now called the Garricks. But it seems like she hasn't exactly gotten away from the creepy stuff from her last job. This time she sees blood on Mrs. Garrick's dress, and that sets off all kinds of alarm bells.
It makes you wonder, is Millie like attracted to these kinds of situations? Or does she just like accidentally find trouble everywhere she goes? The reviewer said you don't have to read The Housemaid before The Housemaid's Secret. Like each book can stand on its own.
Oh, that's good to know. But I am curious, if you've already read the first book, what extra stuff do you get out of reading the second one? Is it just that you know Millie, or is there something deeper?
There are definitely some things that continue from the first book. Like if you've been reading about Millie since the beginning, you get a lot more out of it. You understand her past better and how those experiences might be affecting her in this new situation. Kind of like when you watch a sequel to a movie and you pick up on all the little references to the first one.
That makes sense. But the reviewer did say that The Housemaid's Secret starts off kind of slow, especially after that super intense, twisty first book. Listener name, did you feel that slow start at all?
Yeah, I can see how that would happen. You're all ready for more twists and turns, and then when the beginning's a little slower, it feels different. But the reviewer did point out that things really pick up after you get halfway through the book. And even though the ending felt a little rushed, they still really enjoyed the whole thing.
That just shows how hooked they were on the story. Now, the reviewer was pretty honest about McFadden's writing style, like it's not going to win any awards for being super poetic, but this is where it gets interesting. You mentioned how much you like efficient learning, listener name. Well, McFadden's writing is basically the same thing, just in book form.
Wow, I love that comparison. It's straight to the point, easy to read, which lets you just speed through the book. And when you think about thrillers, that's actually a really good thing. The way it's written really works well with how fast-paced and suspenseful the story is. Like you can't put it down, you just got to know what happens next.
Right, it makes sense. If the writing was full of descriptions and complicated metaphors, it might actually make the thriller less exciting. So even though it might not be literary genius, it definitely does its job. Now, how about the characters themselves? Did the reviewer feel like they were well developed?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky. The reviewer said that the characters were fun to read about, but they didn't really jump off the page. Like they were good for keeping the story moving, but they weren't super deep.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Millie and this other character, Enzo.
Interesting. I mean, we were just talking about how Millie's an ex-con. Seems like there'd be lots to explore there, like her inner struggles and why she does what she does, right?
Yeah, definitely. There was a chance to go deeper into her mind, figure out what brought her to this point in her life and how her past is still affecting her now. Same with Enzo. The reviewer thought he was a little underdeveloped, and it felt like there was a missed opportunity to make his relationship with Millie more interesting.
Yeah, it's weird how a character can be interesting enough to keep the story going, but you still feel like you don't know enough about them. I wonder if that has anything to do with it being written in first person, which the reviewer mentioned. Like, we're inside Millie's head pretty much the whole time, which probably makes you feel closer to her, even if we don't know her whole past.
So that's a good point. Yeah, that first-person perspective, it can be really strong in a thriller, you know?
Yeah.
It pulls you right into the main character's world so you feel all the fear and uncertainty right along with them. But like you said, it also makes it harder for the author, because how do you tell enough to keep the reader interested but not give away too much too soon?
It's like walking a tightrope. And then on top of that, we get these little glimpses into what other characters are thinking. The reviewer said those shifts in perspective really add to the mystery and keep you guessing. It's like you're always having to rethink what you thought was going on.
Exactly. You think you know what's happening, and then bam. You're seeing everything from someone else's point of view, so you have to figure out who to trust all over again.
Which brings us to what really makes these books so addictive, the plot. The reviewer gave McFadden a perfect score for this, saying the plot makes up for anything that might be missing in the writing style or the characters. You can tell she's amazing at building suspense.
Right. It's clear McFadden knows how to write a good thriller. The plot has so many twists and turns, and they all build on each other, so you're always on the edge of your seat. And like we said, those twists aren't just thrown in randomly. They're all planned out to make you question everything you thought you knew.
The reviewer even said they felt manipulated while reading. But in a good way, of course. It's like she knows exactly how to control the story and make you follow along.
It's that feeling of being totally sucked into the book. Your mind is going crazy trying to figure out what's going to happen next. You never know who to trust, and just when you think you've got it all figured out, another twist comes along and throws you for a loop.
Sounds like she takes you on a wild ride, but you're always ready for more.
Totally. And this kind of goes back to something we talked about before, how not every book has to be some deep, award-winning masterpiece.
Mm.
Sometimes you just want to escape into a world of excitement and mystery, and these books are perfect for that. The reviewer even said they felt pressure to learn something from every book, which made it hard to just relax and enjoy it.
Oh, I get that. Especially for people who love to learn, there's this idea that every book has to be super smart or teach you about the world. But sometimes your brain just needs a break and you just want to get lost in a good story.
Exactly. And thrillers are great for that. With all the action and surprises, they let you turn off your thinking brain and just go along for the ride.
So, listener name, what about you? What do you think about all this? Do you try to figure out the mystery along with Millie, or do you just like to see where the story takes you?
Yeah. And what about McFadden's writing style?
Uh,
Does the simple, straight-to-the-point writing make the story more enjoyable for you, or do you wish it was more poetic?
we want to hear your thoughts about this deep dive into the Housemaid series. But before we get to our main takeaways, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. The reviewer said they wished we knew more about Millie's past. It made me wonder what kind of past would make her even more interesting. What secrets could she be hiding that would add even more suspense to the series? Like, what if her being in prison wasn't just some random thing, but it was actually connected to the Winchesters somehow? Or even the Garricks?
Ooh, yeah, that's a really interesting idea. That would make her relationships with those families so much more complicated. Or maybe Millie's not even who she says she is. Like, what if she has some secret reason for taking these jobs? Something besides just needing a place to live.
That's what I love about a good thriller. It gets your imagination going. You start trying to fill in the blanks yourself, coming up with your own theories about the characters and why they do what they do.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe Freida McFadden's already working those ideas into the next book. We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, let's move on to the main takeaways from our deep dive into the Housemaid series.
So if you want a suspenseful book that you can finish in like a couple days, you should definitely check out this series. McFadden's writing style is really straight to the point, which keeps the story moving fast so you can just get lost in all the twists and turns.
And yeah, the characters might not be as deep as in some other types of fiction, but they're good enough to keep the story going. And honestly, sometimes you just want a book that's pure fun.
Totally. It's like riding a roller coaster of suspense. You're not really looking for some deep meaning. You just want to feel the thrill of not knowing what's going to happen next. And McFadden is great at giving you that.
So, listener name, as we wrap up, I'm curious what you thought. What really stood out to you about these books? Did anything about the way McFadden tells stories surprise you?
Yeah, and the big question, would you recommend the Housemaid series to other people who love thrillers and want a quick and exciting read? We always love to hear your thoughts, so let us know what you think. Until next time, happy reading.